Good evening and welcome to my library. This is Felicity, and I am going to do another chapter in A Forest of Bookmarks, or is that The Forest of Bookmarks? Well, anyway, it's My Forest of Bookmarks, and I have another stack, which is most of them are actually a bit more contemporary than the last one, which had a few surprises in it. Anyway, and I'm not going to do my little stack this time because I think I'm over there to the side and bring them one by one. Show you, do a little excerpt. Open up with the bookmark, and there it is. So the first one, I was just looking around to see what have I got on the shelf, and I said, well, how come this is still on the shelf? This is Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye, and this was my first Toni Morrison, and I was absolutely riveted. I have no idea why I put it back on the shelf, but anyway, I'm going to open it at the bookmark. I'm going to read something from it, and it will probably get finished tonight and have the bookmark taken out. High time I did that. Anyway, so where did I stop? In Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye, I appear to have arrived at a chapter called See the Cat, It Goes Meow Meow, Come and play with Jane, the kitten will not play. There you go. So it begins, they come from Mobile, Aiken, from Newport News, from Marietta, from Meridian, and the sound of these places in their mouths make you think of love. When you ask them where they are from, they tilt their heads and say, Mobile, and you think you've been kissed. They say, Aiken, and you see a white butterfly glance off a fence with a torn wing. They say Nagadoches, and you want to say, yes, I will. You don't know what these towns are like, but you love what happens to the air when they open their lips and let the names ease out. That's beautiful. I remember actually I started it and I thought this is actually a fairly it's a fairly dark little story here at times, but oh my goodness, Toni Morrison could write. Anyway, there goes The Bluest Eye, and I think this one needs to get finished and get that bookmark taken out and maybe get another Toni Morrison. Okay, and again, I don't stack my books much by much by content, and just stack them like big to small, so that they're all so that they're all not going to fall off. Okay, what's this one here? Well, look at looky. This is the selected poems of Lord Byron. What's that doing with the bookmark? Well, actually, what it's doing with the bookmark is most of the books on my poetry shelf, which is over there, you can't see, have bookmarks on them because I periodically open them up, and I just want to remember where I had gotten to because I like to go through all of them. I have several collections of the same poets, some collections of multiple poets. The one that I've been going through sort of like very gradually, bit by bit, on the bicycle is this wonderful Markham set that Richardson reads. Very nice gift. I guess he was having one of his major super hauls, and he said, really, would you like them? I said, yes. So they came my way. There's 11 volumes, and it's 11 volumes, and I'm working my way through one by one, and I volume by volume, and I think I have 3 more to go after this, but I'm just sort of savoring it. Some of the poems are a little odd, and some of them are phenomenal. Some of them, of course, are by poets that I know very well, and others I've never heard of them, and sometimes when I read it I say, well, that's why, and sometimes I say, ooh, this one shouldn't have been lost. Anyway, it's a fun collection, but I'm not reading it from that because that's not a forest of bookmarks, really. That's just living by my stationary bicycle, and it gets read. This one seems to have gotten stuck in a pile, not on the poetry shelf, and I think I'm going to read this and then it's going to go back on there. Where was I? Oh, yes. I was in the middle of Childe Harold's Pilgrimage. And since I do try to read one chapter or chapter-esque thing at a time, yes, I had stopped at the beginning of Canto the Second, which begins thus. Come, blue-eyed maid of heaven, but thou, alas, didst never yet one mortal song inspire. Goddess of wisdom, here thy temple was, and is, despite of war and wasting fire, and years that bade thy worship to expire. But worse than steel and flame and ages slow is the dread sceptre and dominion dire of men who never felt the sacred glow that thoughts of thee and thine on polished breasts bestow. Another one in the line of Ozymandias, and several that I've run into, where the decline, the decay of things, not just because of death and destruction and warfare and all those other things, but from people that don't care. Ooh, maybe I better read some more of this one, huh? Childe Harold's Pilgrimage. Okay, now this one. This is a reread. Umberto Eco. Yes, I've read everything except for the theory of semiotics, which I have yet not been able to get through at all. But all of his fiction I've read at least once, as is the case with The Mysterious Flame of Queen Loana. And why I didn't finish reading this one, I think it was for the second time, I don't know. But there you go. It's got a bookmark in it, and I am now going to open it where the bookmark is, and I'm going to read wherever it lands. I must have fallen asleep. Ooh, nice bookmark. Yes. Blackwell's in Oxford. I know where I picked that one up. Oh yes, it's got a really cool little map on the back. This is the map of Oxford. Bookmarks. Yeah, this is from the Bowl of Bookmarks because of the Forest of Bookmarks. Yeah, we'll do a show and tell. Anyway, I keep promising. All right, well, here we go. This one, ooh, yes, oh, the wonderful pictures in this one. So this has, that I'm going to start, I don't even remember. I think it must have been at the next paragraph. So here's the next paragraph. Curious, I said to myself, falling asleep over Buffalo Bill's latest adventure. I was raised on adventure stories that had come from France and America, but had then been naturalized. If this was the nationalistic education that a boy received under the dictatorship, it was a fairly mild one. No, it had not been mild. The first book I picked up the next day was Italy's Boys in the World by Pina Ballario, with sinewy modern illustrations dominated by black and red. A few days earlier, on finding the Verne and Dumas books in my bedroom, I had the feeling that I had read them curled up on some balcony. I paid little attention to this at the time. It was just a flash, a simple sense of déjà vu. But now it occurred to me that there was indeed a balcony in the center of the main wing, and that was where I must have devoured those adventures. Okay, so here was the Buffalo Bill, and he thought it was the mild sort of dictatorship that allowed him that. And then he said, no, I saw this one in it, and it was pretty brutal. So this is now I don't remember, so now I'm going to have to go back and say, why did I stop there? Anyway, Umberto Eco and the Mysterious Flame of Queen Loana. Second read. All right. The next is also one that's on my going forward, a essay at a time. This is volume 2 still of Montaigne, and I'm making my way very, very, very slowly but steadily through it. And this one, all right. Chapter 25. Of not counterfeiting sickness. Oh dear, this may be a little bit more modern than I was hoping for. There is an epigram in Martial, which is one of the good ones, for there are all kinds in him, in which he tells amusingly the story of Coelius, who, to avoid paying court to certain great men at Rome, being present at the rising, accompanying them and waiting on them, pretended to have gout, and to make his excuse more plausible, had his legs anointed and wrapped up, and in every respect imitated the bearing and appearance of a gouty man. At last fortune gave him the pleasure of actually being one, really. So much can painstaking effect, and the art of suffering, Coelius no longer needs to feign gout. Pretend to be sick and then you will be sick. Oh dear. I have read somewhere in Appian, it seems to me, a similar tale of one who, seeking to evade the prescriptions of the triumvirs of Rome by keeping himself hidden and disguised in order to avoid recognition by those who were pursuing him, added the invention of pretending to be one-eyed. When he had recovered a little more liberty, and when he would have left off the plaster that he had for a long time worn over his eye, he found that his sight had actually been lost behind that mask. It is possible that the action of the eye had been impaired by having been so long without exercise. Well, there you go. So medicine, not quite what it is now, eh? Been so long without exercise, and that the visual power had all been transferred to the other eye. For we feel distinctly that the eye that we cover passes over to its fellows something of its force. Right? In such wise that this other grows larger and dilates, just as disuse, together with the heat of the swathings and medicaments, might very well have invited some podagric humor to Martial's gouty man. Reading in Froissart of the vow of a party of young English gentlemen to keep a band over the left eye until they had entered France and performed some feat of arms against us, I have often been amused by the thought that it might have happened to them as to that other, and that they might have all found themselves one-eyed on meeting again their mistresses for whom they had undertaken the enterprise. Mothers do well to reprove their children when they imitate one-eyed people, or lameness, or squinting, or other bodily defects, for besides that the body, then so soft, may thus acquire an ill bent, it seems, I know not how, that fortune delights in taking us at our word. And I have heard of several examples of persons who, having intended only to pretend to be sick, have become so. I have always been in the habit of having a stick or a staff in my hand, both on horseback and on foot, and have even sought elegance in the use of it, and in leaning upon it in an artificial manner. Many have warned me that fortune would some day turn this foppery into necessity. I rely upon this, that I should be the first gouty one of my family. But let us spin out this chapter, and patch on another anecdote about blindness. Pliny tells of a man who, dreaming that he was blind, found himself so on the morrow without any preceding sickness. The power of the imagination may well assist therein, as I have said elsewhere, and it would seem that Pliny is of this opinion. But it is more probable that the inward agitations which the body perceived, of which the doctors may find the cause if they will, were the occasion of the dream. Let us add yet another anecdote germane to this subject, which Seneca relates in one of his letters. You know, he says, writing to Lucilius, that Harpasta, my wife's fool, has lived in my family as an hereditary burden, for by nature I am averse to these monsters, and if I feel inclined to laugh at a fool, I need not seek very far. I laugh at myself. This fool has suddenly lost her sight. I tell you a strange but true thing. She does not perceive that she is blind, and eagerly implores her guardian to take her away, for she says that my house is dark. This that we laugh at in her, I beg you to believe, happens to every one of us. No man recognizes that he is eager to be better off, no man that he desires worldly things. But the blind ask for a guide. We go astray by ourselves. I am not ambitious, we say, but in Rome one cannot live otherwise. I am not extravagant, but the city demands great expenditure. It is not my fault if I am choleric, if I have not yet established any settled manner of life. It is the fault of youth. Let us not seek outside of ourselves what is ill with us. It is in us, is rooted in our bowels, and the very fact that we do not perceive that we are sick makes our cure more difficult. If we do not begin in good season to doctor ourselves, when shall we have attended to so many wounds and so many diseases? Yet we have a very agreeable medicine, philosophy. From other medicines we do not receive pleasure until after the cure. This one pleases and cures at the same time. This is what Seneca says. It's a pretty good chapter. All right, I read the whole thing because it's kind of short. Well, not 2 sentences, but short as such things go. All right, the next thing I'm in the middle of reading, and this I am actually in the middle of reading, is going kind of slowly because I tend to sort of read it over meals. It's The Spanish Civil War by Hugh Thomas. Now, this one's been in my library for a long time. I can't even remember when I got it. This is, it's not even got my name in it. I must have gotten it from somebody. Either that or I picked it up because it seemed like, well, I didn't have anything and wanted to read about it. This particular one was published in, say, 1956. 1961 by Hugh Thomas. So that's a while ago. I don't really know anything about it. I probably should look it up, but I'm not going to. Anyway, it does have a bookmark in it, and this one is from Friends of the Berkeley Public Library. Oh my goodness, love those guys. It's too bad that they're actually closed on the 2 days I have off, because I used to go in and for a few dollars in cash I would pick up bags of books. I do miss that, especially since I've started kind of spending more than I should on books. All right, anyway, that's neither here nor there. All right, so this is from the chapter entitled "The Origins of the War," and I am. Where did I stop? I was actually just reading this morning. There we go. By the autumn, a committee of the newly elected Cortes had prepared a draft constitution. Here the government committed a major blunder. It would have been too much to hope that the new regime could refrain from preparing for itself a written constitution. But it was a grave mistake to make the Constitution of the Republic a highly controversial political document full of emotive phraseology and containing many articles repugnant to many influential and powerful Spaniards. The Liberals of 1931 were thus repeating the mistake of so many of their 19th century predecessors. They identified the new regime only with their own political views. Thus, the draft constitution began by announcing Spain is a democratic republic of workers of all classes organized in a regime of liberty and justice. Government emanated from the people, and all citizens were equal. The country would renounce war as an instrument of national policy. No titles of nobility would be recognized. Both sexes would vote at 23. Yeah, okay, well, yeah, so that's going to be interesting. This is actually interesting. I don't know what is I don't know what is the approved sort of the modern, whatever the modern works on the Spanish Civil War are. It is a kind of an important period. It's a dreadful period. There was a lot of people of every walk of life who went and fought in it. It was maybe one of the very few wars that actually commandeered so much popular opinion and popular say patriotic, but a lot of the people who went and fought, like Hemingway, were not Spanish at all. So it's an interesting read, and after I'm done, maybe it'll be interesting enough that I find something else on it. Anyway, that is where I am. That is where the bookmark is in this one. All right, the next one I also just began reading because I'm now that I saw that I had that, and I was looking for memoirs. I'm reading Freya Stark's Dust in the Lion's Paw. Just started it a few days ago, so the bookmark is still very fresh in this one. I actually hadn't read it before. Well, I do have a lot of books, and I mean to read them all eventually, but there you go. Eventually is a long time, isn't it? So this little guy's got a cute little bookmark from River Oaks Bookstore in Texas. My guess is, since I've never been to a bookstore in Texas, this probably was inside a book I bought, or a book that I bought. There you go. River Oaks Bookstore in Houston, Texas. All right, so I am in the chapter. This is not absolutely beginning. So this was published in this autobiography. Is the subtitle, Autobiography 1939 to 1946, and it does cover the period of World War II. It was published in 1961, and the quote is "I am but as dust in the lion's paw," is from the Shahnameh by Ferdowsi, which is a great work, and I'm sure that it's so long and it's been cut and republished in so many interesting ways that I'm sure I have not read everything in it, but that's a great line. So 20th of February 1940. As if there were not difficulties enough to deal with, our poor telegraph man yesterday fell and drowned himself in a well. The sort of thing one only expects to happen in ruthless rhymes. Capital R, capital R. He was a friendly, mild creature, and I had lavished baksheesh on him, and it always gives one an unpleasant shock when the unsafety of the world is brought home to one. I find he charged $22 for my telegram, but even so, Providence seems to have been drastic. I have your telegram and have replied. Everything English that is not understood here goes to Madame Favetti to be translated. You may tell Mr. Howes in case he doesn't know. So I have been rather obscure, but not, I hope, for your ingenious mind. Favetti. This is the fascists. This is fascists in the Yemen, and she is one of the Italians who presumably is instructed to go through everything that comes in. It is awful to live in this intriguing atmosphere with everyone practically pro-German. I go as carefully as I can, but the very fact of being successful rouses the other side. I no longer hear that Germany will win the war. The cry is, "Poor little Germany, so much weaker. Why drive her to despair?" Yesterday I had a call at 8:45, paid a harem visit, back from my mullah at 11, call from Said and arranged for cinema, rest till 5, 3 veiled ladies to tea, call with them on new neighbors, cinema to the Said's harem after dinner. Typical day. It is most amusing to see the difference of a great man in his own house. You find him sitting in a happy déshabille in what looks like a late Victorian nightdress. He then goes wandering about, picks up a gown here, a scarf there, gold cap and turban, janbia, that's a kind of a dagger, and belt, and goes out the venerable immaculate you see in the majlis, all done while entertaining the lady visitor. This morning I have had the head of police, always rather a nerve-wracking visit, but it was only to quote poetry as far as I could see. There you go. That's actually, this is fun. Yes, it's dated. Yes, it was written a long time ago, but Freya Stark, despite the age, despite the time blindness that we all get when we think we're being fair, dispassionate, but we are actually speaking from the time we're in. Despite all of that, I think Freya Stark, she's one of my literary heroes. I really appreciate her. I do. She was a woman traveling by herself when that just wasn't done. Anyway, that is in my Forest of Bookmarks. That won't be long. Well, this one's been in the Forest of Bookmarks for a little while because I'm finding this pretty heavy going. Well, this is a Barth reader. There you go. So a Roland Barth, very important. Oh, yeah, whatever. Sorry, this is the glare. I just cannot figure that out. I know it's got Mylar on it. So Roland Barth is a very important writer, thinker, philosopher, and I want to get to understand him more, and I feel that it will probably be done very small, painful scraps at a time because, yeah, heavy going for me. Not bad, and a very, very nice translation, but still. So this is a Barth reader, edited with an introduction by Susan Sontag, and I want to say, was this translated, and if so, by who? By various people, probably. Anyway, my bookmark is sitting, here we go. Yeah, it's a nice bookstore. Walden Pond Books in Berkeley. We like them, or in Oakland. We like them. And I got their bookmark. Of course I do. So this is an essay. I'm not going to read you the whole thing. Most of these are actually really long. This is an essay entitled Tacitus and the Funerary Baroque. Counted the murders in the annals, and we are talking about Tiberius. Okay, well, Tacitus Annals, of course, sorry. What am I thinking? Counted, the murders in the annals are few enough, some 50 for 3 principates. But read, their effect is apocalyptic. From element to mass, a new quality appears. The world is transformed. That's where there's a footnote that says, in the 9th year of the emperor's reign, fortune suddenly deranged everything. Tiberius becomes a cruel tyrant as well as an abettor of cruelty in others. Perhaps that is what the Baroque is, a growing contradiction between unit and totality, an art in which extent is not additive but multiplicative, in short, the density of an acceleration. In Tacitus, from year to year, death gels, and the more divided the moments of this solidification became, the more inseparable their sum. Generic death is massive, not conceptual. The idea here is not the product of a reduction, but of a repetition. We know, of course, that terrorism is not a quantitative phenomenon. We know that during our revolution the number of tortures was laughable, but we also know that for the next century, from Büchner to Jouve, I am thinking of his preface to selections from Danton, We have seen terrorism as a being, not a volume. A Stoic during an enlightened despotism, a creature of the Flavians writing under Trajan the history of Julio-Claudian tyranny, Tacitus is in the situation of a liberal living in the atrocities of sans-culotism. For him, the past is a hallucination, an obsessional theater, a scene even more than a lesson. Death is a protocol. It's very interesting. It's just, I have to think a lot when I'm reading it because it's a very different kind of way of thinking. And when it's not your way of thinking or my way of thinking, then I have to work harder to try to make sure that I'm just not glazing over or glossing over the words to say, okay, well, I read those words, and then go back and say, well, what did I read? Which is sometimes what I do. I'm counting pages, I'm counting words. Oh, look, I read 50 pages today, I read 100 pages today. Yeah, but what was in them? So that's actually one thing I'm trying to do this year, is actually not do so much page counting and do more what was in those pages that I just read. I got two more for you. Okay, this one, this one's a set of four. I've got the Stanley Weinbaum. This is volume 2 of his collection. I've got four, all four. And this is, Weinbaum died way too young. Wonderful science fiction writer. If he lived longer, he would have done some amazing things. And this one, I'm just going to start this one. This is from a chapter within the Black Flame, a story called The Black Flame. Chapter's entitled Forest Meeting. Just read a little tiny bit of this. A week, the third since Connor's awakening to sane thought, had passed. He sat on a carved stone bench before Evanese cottage and reveled in the burning canopy of stars and copper moon. He was living, if what he had been told was true, and he was forced to believe it now, after untold billions had passed into eternity. Right. It's really beautiful writing. He died way too young. So this is Stanley Weinbaum, volume 2, a 4-volume set of his works. Right, last one I just picked up, and the bookmark is still very, very, very fresh because here is my biography of Rosenbach that I just got, and it is by Edwin Wolfe and John Fleming, and it is about a fascinating subject in a fascinating time about the most fascinating thing in the universe, books. What could be better? Anyway, yeah, so and yes, my bookmark here is the Strand. We've seen this before. Yes, I have a lot of bookmarks from the Strand because I bought a lot of books from the Strand. There you go. All right. So this is from the chapter entitled The Birth of a Bookseller. That is the second, no, it's the third chapter in the book. So he's just set up his little book establishment in the shop of his brother, Philip Hyman, who, as far as I can tell, was never actually very successful. The only smart thing he did so far is to say, hey, Abby, want to set up a shop with selling your little books? You might get a few things out of it. Okay. It should not be supposed that Dr. Rosenbach, he had also just graduated he did a graduate degree after he had finished the uni. It should not be supposed that Dr. Rosenbach was catapulted to fame by his mere entrance into the bookselling business, or that the firm of Rosenbach attained wealth and stature overnight. The struggle was a long one and a hard one, not made any easier by the two-headed nature of the business. At the end of the first fiscal year in June 1904, the company had done only $16,745 gross business. The rent owed Mr. Fox had to be transformed into notes, and he loaned them another $12,000, while Isabella Rosenbach took money out of one pocket and put it in another so that they could pay for the Pollock stock. A letter from Philip to his brother gives some idea of how close to the wind they were sailing. Tell Sis I will bring her the money either then, tomorrow, or Friday, sure. Let the $8 apply to what I owe you, and send the bills out tomorrow, sure. Right, please remit on them. Give my love to Mother, and kiss her for me. Tell her the first check comes in, I will pay Gimbels. The next year sales doubled, and the cumulative deficit was down to $756. Our percentage of profits on the gross sales has been 100%, President P.H., that's Philip Hyman, Rosenbach told his stockholders in 1905, which is really a remarkable profit. Only done from the books, nothing coming from his part of it. The mainstay of the business, he announced, was prints and frames, but furniture and bric-a-brac were becoming popular. It seems easier to sell an article for $10 in an establishment of this kind than it does for $1. Philip's sales always lagged a couple of zeros behind Abe's. In these early days, when full and chatty reports were rendered at the annual meetings, there was but passing mention made of the book end of the business. The doctor, however, was building soundly. Most of his sales were items secured from English dealers on consignment, mixed with some from Beaumont, I don't know, which he turned over to his customers at a modest 10% profit. But he was getting people accustomed to buying something better than $10 books from him. While Philip sold W. Harrison a boar's head and a bear's head, and Miss Fishblatt a set of antlers, the doctor persuaded the lady that no shelf of books was complete without a fourth folio of Shakespeare. There you go. Dr. Rosenbach. So this is I visit the Rosenbach Museum every time I go to Philadelphia, and it is a pilgrimage for me. I really appreciate it. I go through the floors of all the hoo-ha, the 2 floors of stuff. They usually have a very interesting display down in the foyer, which is usually related, something to do with the books, but the 3rd floor is the library, and we all look forward to that. Anyway, that is today's presentation of the Forest of Bookmarks. Maybe one of these days I'll be able to announce, well, I don't really have enough in the Forest of Bookmarks that I haven't mentioned because I'm reading them. Ha! That'll be the day. Anyway, thank you for watching, and goodbye for now.